Happy Halloween! Wasabi guys, coming back at y'all with another video for Halloween. We're going to be going over the top 10 best zombie cards in the Commander format. Now just to clarify, this is not necessarily cards that are good in Zombie Tribal, but just brilliant zombies in the Commander format as a whole. This also does not include cards like the Scarab God or Giza and Geralf, cards that reference zombies but are not zombies themselves. So let's get into the honorable mentions. The first one we have here is Skullbriar the Walking Grave. A very strong option as a Voltron commander, seeing as no matter what zone he's in, whether he's in the command zone or in the graveyard, he's going to keep those +1/+1 counters that are on him, and he gets a +1/+1 counter each time he deals combat damage. So if you have a way to manipulate counters, get doubling season effects out there, he is super strong and very difficult to deal with. Also give him some evasion and you're likely going to be able to knock players out. However, as one of the 99, he doesn't really see consistent play, which is the only downside. He just wouldn't really make the cut. And then we have Death Baron. A lot of cards like Death Baron are not going to make this list. The Zombie Lords in general, the Diagraph Captains, things like that. I feel that there's just so many more iconic zombies that see a ton of play in this format. So to put one of these on the list, I mean, Death Baron is one of the best, if not the best you can choose from. I would have to consider also putting a ton of the other ones on the list as well, and there's just too many, really. And then we have Newscraft Mob. Very unique. I absolutely love this in zombie tribal-based decks, which can get out of hand pretty quickly if you have doubling season effects where you can get multiple tokens out of the deal, or if you have something that can replenish the +1/+1 counters on them, you can just take this and just generate a whole army of these little 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Didn't make the list for a very similar reason as Death Baron, just a little bit too specific towards zombie tribal and not too special in other decks. Big downside, but other than that though, I absolutely love the card in zombie tribal. Now onto the actual list. Number 10 is Nekusar the Mind Razor. Probably didn't expect seeing him, but he is technically considered a zombie. Other than the fact that he sees little to no play in zombie tribal because that's the only synergy he really has, he is one of the most popular commanders in the whole format. Being able to deal a ton of damage to them while also drawing a ton of cards with wheel effects is always fun with this guy, and he is such a fun commander. I absolutely love him. I know a ton of people hate him. They think he's oppressive, he's not fun, but he is just incredible. I love the artwork too. Just a unique style. Pretty good commander. Number 9 is Thraxamundar. Sees a little bit more play as one of the 99 than Nekusar, so barely edged him out for this spot. But what you get is just a very powerful, very intimidating creature. Whenever you attack, you force an opponent to sacrifice a creature, and you get to put a +1/+1 counter on him, so he just keeps getting bigger. He's a pain in the ass. An auto-include in a deck such as Marchesa the Black Rose, so that you can constantly just recur him and just get more and more sack triggers off of your opponent's stuff. Take advantage of that with Blood Artist effects, things like that. And if you have +1/+1 counter manipulation, you can also take advantage of that as well. I, of course, just mentioned Marchesa, so there are a ton of options, though. You can also throw him into a Grixis zombie deck, either as the commander or one of the 99, in another commander, which I'm going to be getting into later here, who makes a pretty good commander option in Grixis colors as well. But yeah, one of the most intimidating creatures in the format. He's been around for a while now. A lot of people just love him. He's so intimidating, and he does make a pretty cool, aggressive, combat, aggro-based Grixis deck. He has 7 mana, but he does have haste and a pretty good ability. Kind of an equalizer. Number 8 is Grimgrim Corpse. Very similar to Thraxamundar, but I feel like he has just a little bit more flavor when it comes to being able to synergize with zombie decks as well as just other decks in the format. Works out pretty well in Marchesa the Black Rose. Gets a +1/+1 counter on itself whenever you sacrifice a creature. Gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you destroy a creature an opponent controls, whenever you attack with it. Only downside is that he does have to enter the battlefield tapped, and you do need creatures in order to untap him. So that is a very small downside, seeing as that is also an upside. For strategic purposes, you also want to get some sack triggers in a lot of these black decks in Commander. And there are a lot of Grave Pact effects as well as Blood Artist effects to take advantage of that with. And overall, just flavor-wise, he is a perfect zombie commander. You want to be able to sacrifice your zombies. You want to be able to find ways of recurring them later, and why not do it while also pumping up your commander? And he does see play in a ton of these zombie decks, so huge upside there. Absolutely love him. He doesn't see as much play as I think a lot of the other cards on this list, but he is still a very powerful creature. Number 7 is Geth, Lord of the Vault. Not necessarily a good zombie tribal card, but he is still technically considered a zombie. What you get, though, is an activated ability that is just incredibly powerful in mill strategies, as well as just decks that want to take advantage of the graveyard in general. You get to pay 1 black and X mana, so it's a mana sink, awesome. And you get to put an artifact or a creature from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tap, and you mill X cards from the top of their library into their graveyard, so that's fun. You get to refill their graveyards, you get to basically add to the card pool of what you can take, and the card pool being their graveyard. So that is incredible. He makes an interesting commander option. I wouldn't say he's best as commander. He obviously shines as one of the 99, especially when you consider one of the newer commander options in Maricel the Pretender. Absolutely loves activated abilities, and this is a pretty solid activated ability. Recursion's awesome, but also being able to bring back an artifact, super powerful. Mono black decks, if you want some good recursion from your opponent's graveyard, if you want to manipulate graveyards in general, this guy is amazing. Number 6 is Cedrus the Traitor King. In my opinion, the best Grixis zombie commander option, seeing as his ability to give your creatures in your graveyard unearth for 2 generic mana and 1 black. That is super powerful, and there are ways to manipulate that, such as blink effects, being able to Deadeye Navigator, blink a creature back. It basically just ignores the whole unearth downside, where whenever the creature would leave, it just exiles. It is technically a replacement effect, so the creature would come back into play under your control, and it would forget all about the unearth activated ability, the trigger at the end step when it would have to be exiled. So just giving your creatures unearth, though, in a zombie tribal deck, that is super flavorful, as well as just being powerful. It's very competitive when you compare it to a lot of the other sort of graveyard-based decks in the format, such as Carador Ghost Chieftain and Marin of Clan Neltoth. Being able to bring creatures back from the graveyard is kind of a staple in those decks, and this guy is no different, seeing as you can do this with multiple creatures in your graveyard. All you really need to do is just traumatize yourself and just get a ton of options in your graveyard, and you just pay 3 mana for each one you want to bring back. If you have anything that can help push in for extra damage, it is quite deadly. And he makes a pretty solid combo commander. Like I said, with Deadeye Navigator, he does kind of get around the whole unearth downside. So a very strong option in Grixis. Definitely a better option in Grixis zombies as a commander compared to Thraxamundar and definitely Nekasar. Although I would definitely consider putting Thraxamundar in as one of the 99 in this deck. Very strong option. Number 5 is Gorgari Lich. Absolutely love this guy. He's one of my favorite zombies. He's also a wizard too, so he works out pretty well as far as wizards go. But being able to pay 1 generic mana and cast a creature from any graveyard just for paying that 1 extra mana, that is super powerful. And I covered this guy before in my Dimir top 10. He ranked pretty high on that list, so he's naturally going to rank pretty high as far as zombies go. Outside of just the zombie tribe, he fits in so well in graveyard-based decks, reanimator-based strategies. Throw him into a good zombie-based deck, and you just get a ton of flavor. Graveyard synergies are always good, so being able to just recast a creature from any graveyard, not just yours, but your opponent's as well, that is super powerful. I really don't have to say too much else about it. Geth is strong in being able to bring back artifacts from your opponent's graveyard, but the fact that this guy can do it from any graveyard, including your own, is also pretty strong. Absolutely love him. Just about every single blue-black deck I play, I try to make an effort to play this guy because he is just so powerful. Graveyard-based synergies are always strong in Commander. There's just so many good creatures to choose from. And we have number 4, which is Gorgari Lich Lord. This guy can get massive based off of the number of creatures in your graveyard. That, however, is not even the best part about him because he has an activated ability where you get to sacrifice a creature, have each opponent lose life equal to that sacrificed creature's power. So right there, you could just pay 3 mana and knock someone out. Say you have a Lord of Extinction or you have a Consuming Aberration, something that is likely just insanely powerful, and it's likely going to be more than 40 power. Just for 3 mana, you can shut the game down right there. That's insane. And also the fact that you can just sacrifice a swamp and a forest to return him from your graveyard to your hand. So he's recurable in the sense that he can bring himself back to your hand. You get to replay him again at the cost of just sacrificing 2 lands. That might seem like a big deal, but when you can just bring him back and likely win the game for just 3 extra mana, that's pretty solid. But aside from the fact that he's pretty good in zombie decks for that reason, that he recurs himself and he can also just be a sack outlet for your other zombies, he's also just good in decks such as Marin of Clan Neltoth, the Mimeoplasm, decks like that where you want to get a ton of awesome creatures in your graveyard to take advantage of. And he's definitely one of those awesome creatures late game as well, because he can also be one of those Consuming Aberration, Lord of Extinction type of creatures that just gets insanely big because you have a ton of creatures in your graveyard. Just very awesome for multiple different reasons. One of those zombies that, just one of those creatures that's also going to be an auto-include in a ton of Golgari themed decks I play in the future. He's just so powerful and he's likely going to win games for you. And then we have number 3, the newest card on this list, Vindictive Lich. Why is it so high on this list, you might be asking? Well, for the fact that it is specifically designed for Commander. It has 3 different modes that target 3 different opponents, and why not? It's perfect for Commander. You're likely going to be playing at least 3 other opponents, so you're going to be spreading the damage around, spreading the love around. One of your opponents is going to have to discard 2 cards, one of your opponents is going to have to lose 5 life, one of your opponents is going to have to sacrifice a creature. And when you can constantly recur a zombie like this, you can just shut so many opponents down. And even 1v1, it's still pretty solid because you have to imagine any way to infinitely just recur the sky back from your graveyard, sacrifice him, just bring it back over and over again, you're going to win the game. Just a lot of combo potential with him already, just for the fact that all 3 of his modes are pretty solid, even in a multiplayer game where you just recur him maybe a couple times. Someone's going to be losing 5 life multiple different times. Someone's going to be sacrificing a creature multiple different times. Someone's going to be discarding 2 cards. So even 1v1, being able to choose from those 3, you have the potential of either killing your opponent by forcing them to lose 5 life each time it dies, or you're going to be locking them out of creatures, or you're going to be forcing them to play with just no hand. I mean, that's incredibly powerful, and it's like it's just going to be fit into so many black decks, especially the graveyard-based ones that can recur it over and over again, obviously. But there are just so many decks, wizard-themed decks, zombie-themed decks, just black good stuff decks that want to play this guy because it's just so powerful. Just an incredibly good card, well-designed as well. Number 2, we have Mikaeus the Unhallowed. As far as just power in the zombie department, can't really go without mentioning this guy, and he does rank pretty high on my list for the obvious combos with Triskelion. He also combos with Persist creatures and Sack Outlets, because you can just constantly bring them back. And Persist deals with -1/-1 counters, and the +1/+1 counter they get off of Mikaeus' trigger negates the -1/-1 counter, so you can just keep bringing them back. So things like Glenalendra could just constantly come back, and if you have a Blood Artist, you win the game. Pretty solid. And the obvious combo with Triskelion, which I just mentioned, wins you the game if your opponents don't have like split-second removal, such as a Croson Grip for your opponent's Triskelion, because you can just remove the counters in response. So it's very deadly, and cards like Tooth and Nail are just insanely powerful because of guys like Mikaeus the Unhallowed, and cards like Tooth and Nail are just incredibly powerful because of Mikaeus the Unhallowed and Triskelion, as well as other 2-card combos. There are a ton of them, but really this is one that sees a ton of play in this format. Not just +1/+1 counter synergistic decks, but zombie-based decks as well. And Mikaeus, if you want to play more fair, there are definitely a ton of ways you can do that. The fact that he gives an anthem, a +1/+1 anthem, to all of your non-human creatures is also pretty good for zombies as well. He is also a zombie lord if you want to throw him in there. Pretty good. Giving all your non-human creatures Undying is also pretty good as well. So you have those creatures that can constantly just come back, be problematic, even if you're just playing him fairly, or what would be considered fair outside of the obvious combos. But again, graveyard recursion is pretty strong, and if you have that among your creatures, that's also pretty good, bringing them back over and over again. Only downside is that he doesn't do it for himself, which isn't that big of a deal. Usually going to make it a very difficult time for your opponent to have to deal with him and just deal with your whole team, because they're just going to keep coming back. Just a very strong zombie in this format, and he makes a pretty solid commander. Number 1 is Sadistic Undead Vizier. Sees a ton of play around this format. In my opinion, it's an auto-include in just about every single black deck I play. You get the creature if you exploit another creature, so she has Death Touch. Also gives you that sack trigger if you're interested in that, as well as just being a zombie, so you have the zombie synergy as well. But yeah, tutors on creatures are insanely easy to abuse. You can recur them over and over again. You can flicker them and just get the triggers all over again and get a ton of cards from your deck to your hand. And one of those cards that is just becoming a staple all around in this format. Tutoring tends to be a game-winning thing in this format, so be sure to take advantage of it. If you don't know about tutors, they're pretty strong. But yeah, I mean, you have the sacrifice synergies in the zombie tribe, as well as the fact that she's just a zombie herself. You can throw her into tribal-based decks if you want to, and it makes sense. You can throw her into just about every single black deck, and it makes sense to some degree. I mean, obviously, there's some 4 or 5 color decks that might not consider it because it's just too expensive for a tutor. But other than that, just a very strong option that you can put into just about any black deck. So anyway, guys, that was my top 10 zombie list for the Commander format. Let me know what your favorite zombies are. Was there a zombie that didn't make the list that you were curious about? Be sure to leave that comment in the comment section. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful Halloween. Take it easy. Void here signing off.